And we should be live. Okay, so it's the same routine as we've done before. We're going to be watching an old episode of Crimewatch. This one is from August 1984, and I'll be showing you the cases, and then I'll be telling you whether they've been solved, whether they're still unsolved, or if I just couldn't find any information on them, which happens a lot. So, yeah, this here is your trigger warning. So I will probably make some wisecrack remarks throughout. I will remind you these are real, true life cases, and a lot of them are quite horrific. Okay, so with that, let's play the titles. Classic Crimewatch theme.
Hello and welcome to the program where you can help stop crime. The detectives behind me need your help with unsolved crimes, and they're waiting for your call. And so
Again, no way that lady's really on the phone.
Here's the number: 01 811 8055.
People don't know what they're calling in about yet.
If you can.
Remember, everything you see tonight is fact. All our
Probably a wrong
reconstructions
number.
are based meticulously on evidence taken from police files. We use the actual locations and, where possible, the actual cars, clothes, sometimes even the people involved. In the next 40 minutes, you may see someone you recognise or something you remember. If so, we'll be waiting for your call.
Calls last month had dramatic and immediate results.
Obviously,
Remember
don't
the
actually call
after
in.
time
These
gang?
numbers won't work.
Two men held customers at gunpoint for 2 hours in the old Stanley pub in Liverpool and robbed them. 10 days later, there was a similar attack at the Bluebell Inn in Warrington in Cheshire.
That was this last
Police helped
episode.
us to make a very vivid reconstruction in the hope that
Yeah,
people
the
who
guys
knew
have
the
both been
culprits
arrested.
might
They
call
insisted his name
in
was
all,
Tony.
500 people phoned,
Neither of them
and
were
as a
called
result
Tony.
of information received, two men, George Christopher Kendrick and Dominic Thomas Gallagher, both from Liverpool, have been remanded in custody on two charges of aggravated burglary and one of wounding.
No one
There were
called
100
Tony.
calls with help for detectives hunting the killer of Caroline Osborne, who ran a small business looking after dogs in Leicester.
Again, we've done this one
reconstruction showed what
in the
was
last
almost
episode as
certainly
well.
the last time she was
This
seen
case
live
has also
at
been
Aylesford
solved.
Meadows in
She was
July
murdered
last
by
year.
a man called Paul Bostock, who was just 16 at the time. So,
Then there was that unidentified blue van. The police had a particularly promising lead from one caller. Remember, they're anxious to find a blue
van
which
turned
Caroline
out
had
to be a
sometimes
red
been seen
herring.
using. They tracked down one such van and its owner in the area, but last week finally eliminated it from their inquiries. So they're still looking and following up some of the 43 new clues they received as a result of the programme. And if you knew Caroline ever, please do call. We'll let you know what happens as the other leads unravel.
As I said,
And after
that
last
case
month's
has been
Crime Watch,
solved.
there were important developments in Britain's biggest ever household break-in. The house, Woburn Abbey, the haul, £5 million worth of silver.
Yeah.
We showed how the thieves
Again,
beat
as I said in the
patrolling
last
guards
one,
and the elaborate security system to
the
get
goods
the
have
historic
been
treasures.
recovered.
As a result of the mounting publicity, direct
whether the
negotiations
thieves
began
were
between
ever
the police
caught,
and one of the crooks.
I haven't been able
The
to
police set up a
confirm.
trap with the silver as bait, but the plan went wrong when two water workers making a routine check stumbled onto the treasure and thought it was a bomb. Ah well,
Of all the
police
times
say
to
they
be
know who they're after
actually
and they expect to
diligent
make an
about
arrest
your work.
shortly.
Well, tonight we want you to watch a reconstruction of a strange and sinister case which has been baffling police for the last 5 months. It's the killing of a little boy. The motive is unclear. What we do know is that the case involves a mysterious nighttime visitor, a disappearing television set, and a car left with its headlights on. The victim,
these
who
cases,
died from a savage beating, was 9-year-old Christopher Laverack. He lived in Humberside,
they're not fun.
in the Anlaby district
They
of
are
Hull.
quite horrific.
Every other Friday, when he wasn't spending the weekend with his father, Christopher Laverack was brought here to number 7 Harpham Grove to stay with his half-sister and her family. His mother and stepfather made sure that he got there in time for his favourite TV show, The Fall Guy.
No way was The Fall Guy anyone's favourite TV show.
Christopher always had a good time staying with his half-sister, Kim, and her husband, Stephen Hines.
He looks a very responsible adult.
Despite a complicated family life, Christopher was a happy kid. Friends knew him as a shy and sensible lad who loved motorbikes and watching TV. He was getting on well at school and had just recently joined the local church choir. That night, as often happened, Christopher's half-sister, Kim, was driven to a local pub, The Crown, where she worked as a barmaid, leaving husband Stephen with their own young son and Christopher.
Yeah, I have problems with that guy.
At the pub in Marfleet Lane, Chris's mother and stepfather stopped off for a drink with Kim before going to visit relatives.
I should look to see if that pub's still
Later
there.
that evening, with Christopher still watching the television and the baby in bed, Stephen decided to go out. This was the last reported sighting of Christopher Laverack.
I won't be long. Keep an eye on Martin. What sort of crisps do you want?
Cheese and onion, please.
Oh, I know there's always a bit of,
Two cheese and onion.
well, that was the
Stephen
time
also went
about
to the
these
Crown,
things,
the
but
pub where Kim was
that just
working.
seems irresponsible.
Back at Harpham
To
Grove,
just leave
an
a
unfamiliar
7-year-old
parked car had caught the
Well,
eye
to
of a
just leave a
neighbour,
7-year-old on his
Christopher
own
called Auntie Marge.
one thing, but
She
a
was
baby
wondering
as well.
why the car had been left with its headlights on.
Steve. Steve. Steve, I want to talk to you. Steve.
The old curtain twitcher.
Steve, I want to talk to you.
The voice came from someone standing outside Steve's front door. At the dividing wall, Auntie Marge heard the front door being opened. Then
She
all
is so
seemed
nosy.
quiet, so she went off to bed. A few minutes later, she heard the car
She was just
pulling
looking
away.
for some gossip.
That car, according to the best evidence police have, was shaped like this. It's never been traced.
Wow. Amazing. I can't believe they never found it.
By now, Stephen had spent about an hour in the pub.
Chris?
Yeah, just left.
Chris?
Yeah, just
Apart
left
from the baby
left
crying,
left
the
the
house
baby
was
on its own
strangely
for an hour.
quiet. The television had been ripped out. And then it dawned. Christopher had
Yes.
gone.
Why'd you rip it? Why wouldn't you just unplug it? I don't understand that. I don't understand that mentality.
Stephen ran to tell Kim and then called the police. They started a search in and around the house. Christopher had never run away, and his mother had no idea where he was. His real father was contacted, but he hadn't seen Chris either. The search went on into the night. It was intensified at
They
first
seem a little
light,
too close
panning out
together.
across wasteland near Harpham Grove. But there was no sign of Christopher.
I feel like they should be spread out a bit more.
Nor was there the ransom demand that was half expected. Christopher Laverack had now been missing for 36 hours.
Glad they got that shot.
Expecting the worst, police divers began dragging a nearby stretch of water. But the discovery was not made by the police. At the same time, 10 miles away, alongside Beverly Beck, this man was taking his usual Sunday morning stroll with his dog.
That's. I wonder what motivated him to start
Christopher
poking that
Laverack had died as a
carpet
result
bag.
of severe head injuries inflicted, the police believe, on Friday night.
Yeah, you see a carpet bag floating. I don't know.
Detective Chief Inspector Baker is in charge of that case. Now, that
What
bag
makes
that
you
Christopher
want
was
to
found in
poke
was
at it?
actually a carpet bag, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a Treader underlay carpet bag, and this is one identical to it.
And are you hoping that somebody might find that gone missing, maybe lost it or
Yes,
lent it?
hoping that somebody in the Humberside or Beverley area, sometime prior to the 9th of March, might have thrown one away or might have lent one to
Does anyone
somebody.
still use
Or
carpet
might
bags?
have left one outside and it suddenly disappeared, or something like that.
How much do you know about how and where he died?
Well, we know that Christopher died on the Friday night. We know that he died of severe head injuries. And we also know that he died in a field which contained growing winter barley.
Now, forensic evidence shows that he died on the Friday night, but it wasn't until the Sunday morning, in fact, that he was found 9 miles away from Harpham Grove in Beverley Beck. How do you think he might have got into Beverley Beck?
Well, obviously, we think he's gone in some form of vehicle. Which vehicle, we don't know.
I would say
Maybe
that's
that car,
a good
that
guess.
unidentified car from that night.
Well, obviously, we're very interested in that vehicle, and despite numerous appeals to the press and the TV, the driver of that vehicle hasn't come forward.
But somebody at the Beck that weekend may have seen something.
It's just a silhouette
That's
of a
right,
car.
and
How are you
we've
going
had
to
a big
hope
response
to
from the public,
identify
and
anything
many
from
people
that?
come forward, but we've never had a sighting of Christopher's body in the Beck until it was seen actually on the Sunday morning.
So you think somebody perhaps would have parked on that bridge or driven past that bridge and seen something?
Somebody could, yes, we did get a lot of reports of vehicles stationary on that bridge, and there's roads that go alongside the Beck, and the boy's body could have easily been put in from there.
Now, what about this television set? The strange thing about it is that it was ripped out from the back of the set, the flex, while it was still plugged in.
That's right. This is the actual flex. That this end was plugged into the wall in 7 Harpham Grove. This end went towards the television set, and we believe there's a piece missing from here.
I guess maybe
So what
he
we're
could have
hoping to trace
grabbed
is
it.
the television set, and we're hoping that somebody might know of somebody who has got a
Trying to
television
stop
set
himself
with
being
unusually short
being
cable,
pulled
or
away,
somebody's
maybe.
asked to repair one, or somebody sold one, or somebody's now got one in the possession. And we're also asking for farmers who have been harvesting in fields of winter barley to keep an eye open for this television set. And we regard this as a vital piece of evidence.
We might find who killed Christopher Laverack if we can find that television set.
Could well be the case, yes.
Mr. Baker, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So,
Right.
if you've
Okay.
got that ITT television
So-
or know anything else about
So I was going to pause it there. So Christopher Laverack, yeah. See, a very sad and horrific case, but fortunately, I can confirm it. It has been solved. Not for a long time after, not until 2012. So the murderer turned out to be his uncle, Melvin Reed, who was a convicted paedophile. He was already serving his sentence for 2 sexual offences, and he died 4 years earlier in prison in 2008. What's quite interesting was the case was solved using plant and pollen material that was traced to a brick that was linked to a water feature in his garden. And he only lived 10 minutes away from where Christopher was taken. So yeah, it's quite interesting, that it was solved using pollen. I don't know how common that is in police work. But yeah, officially this case thankfully is closed. All right, let's move on.
The murder, the number, remember, 01811 8055. Or you can phone Humberside Police direct at Hull. The number, Hull 796 271. That's 0482 for Hull 796 271. Well, now, this month's Aladdin's Cave.
Oh,
Valuables
yes, the
recovered
Aladdin's
by the
Cave.
police and which they suspect are stolen. They need to find their rightful owners. Now, last time, over 50 items were identified and 2 big burglaries were cleared up as a result. This month's haul is in the custody of Thames Valley Police, but it might have come from anywhere. So if you've ever been burgled and lost anything unusual, watch closely as John Bly from the Antiques Roadshow goes through this month's loot.
But before he does that, let's give this the proper intro it deserves.
Thank you, Nick.
There you go.
Well, once
Seamless.
again, the range of antiques is enormous, but this time we've got a lot of pictures. We've got oils and watercolours, portraits and landscapes, ancient and modern, even a Renoir and a Cézanne. But be they masterpieces or merely decorative paintings, any of these will have left quite a gap on the wall. So too will any one of these bracket clocks, ranging in date from the Edwardian one at the end to
Oh
Victorian.
yeah, that's
then
definitely
a
my
Regency,
clock.
late Regency one,
Or it
then
could be that
early
one.
19th century, and this one, my particular favourite, made about 1735 by William Howes of London, and retaining its original red lacquer case in the Chinese
You know,
taste.
my mum has a thing about
Now, you know, Chinese
clocks for
decoration
some reason.
revived again in Regency
So
England and
maybe
remained
she did.
fashionable throughout the 19th
Maybe
century.
she did end up with one of
Just
these.
look for an example at this late but quite lovely vase. The colours in there are quite stunning. Set as they are against this black background, it's quite an important vase. Too late to be a really great antique
Important
value, but
vase,
a wonderful
eh?
thing. Now from ceramics to silver.
What's so
In silver, this
important
little
about
snuff
it?
box has a story to tell. Made in Birmingham in 1835, it was later inscribed by Dr. G.J. Hall in memory of his late uncle, Sir David J.H. Dixon. And I'm sure that that little box must have revived, I hope, someone's memory. Curiously enough,
Sure, it
the
revived
best
a lot
furniture
of
we've got
things.
tonight is also in silver, but not in miniature. And here, 3 little pieces of silver from the mid-19th century, typical Dutch pieces made as Victorian novelties. And they are part of a collection which is in that cabinet, the display cabinet at the end. It's a specially made
tea
cabinet
party
and it
for
would have made
mice,
a
I
very
guess.
important and quite a long established collection. But those are all individual pieces in a collection of miniatures. The most important and stunning thing for my mind tonight is this European ivory carving. It is later mounted in silver as a drinking vessel and has around it a parade of these most wonderful little rounded,
You said it's a drinking
cheerful,
vessel.
chubby
I'm
little
thinking more
cherubs
biscuit
or
tin.
putti or amorini, what can only be described in bacchanalian pursuits. That is quite a wonderful object, and I know one thing, I'd sorely miss it if it were mine. I hope you've recognized something tonight, and if you have, please ring us here at
I
Crimewatch
bet he
UK.
lays claims to a lot
John
of them.
Bly. Here's the number 01811 8055. Or you can ring Thames Valley. Ring them at Reading 585 111. That's 0734 585 111. Now to the Crimewatch UK Incident Desk, where we invite the police to appeal to you directly for help in solving crime. Here are Detective Constable Helen Phelps and Chief Inspector David Hatcher.
Here we go.
First on incident
Just
desk
the short
tonight,
appeals.
a particularly macabre case. Yianula Yiani, a 17-year-old Cypriot girl, was raped and strangled 2 years ago this week at her home in Belsize Road, Hampstead, London. We believe the murderer is also responsible for the desecration of her grave, which began last October, almost a year after her death. The grave is in the New Southgate Cemetery in North London. Yianula's parents
Shocking.
noticed that the oil lamp below the cross at the grave had been interfered with. The wick had been removed over 40 times. The desecration actually happened on one occasion while the grave was under police surveillance, using infrared cameras, and yet the film revealed nothing. The Metropolitan Police have used the newly developed BBC Crimewatch video fit system to improve this photo fit of a man seen following
Just
Nuala near her home
incompetent police.
shortly before she died. With the help of the witness and the investigating officer, we brought it much closer to the witness's original memory by adding colour to the eyes, skin and hair. He's described as 5'6" tall, in his late teens or early 20s, possibly of Greek Cypriot origin and also possibly with a moustache. The video fit shows us what he'd look like
Possibly.
without the moustache too. Much younger, in fact nearer the age the witness remembered him to be. Do you know anyone who looks like this? Have you seen anyone behaving suspiciously in or around New Southgate
I don't know
Cemetery?
how
And we'd
helpful these
also
video
like to see
fits
if you
ever
can
were.
recognise two men who robbed the National
let me
and Provincial
just,
Building Society in Victoria Street, London, on the 9th of January this year.
Just cut her off. Okay, so who are we doing? Yanu Yani. Okay, so I can confirm that again. Yes, her case has been solved, but unfortunately, again, it was a long time coming. Her killer wasn't convicted until 2016. So the murderer was this guy, James Warnock, who claimed he was in a sexual relationship with Yanni, but that claim was rejected by the jury. And how he had been caught was again through DNA evidence. After it was actually related to a DNA sample he had provided to the police after he had been arrested for sharing indecent images of children. And I hate that that is becoming a theme. But yeah, whether he was responsible for desecrating her grave, I don't know, but probably. Right, let's just go back.
Unknown to them, two cameras recorded their every move. The time was 4:40 on a Monday afternoon. This is how the leader of the two men threatened staff with a gun. He's thought to be in his late 30s and may have a northern accent. His partner
He
is in
may
his
have
20s.
an accent.
From the pictures, we're convinced that someone will be able to recognise one or both of these men, and if so, we'd like to hear from you. Take another closer look. You may have seen two men like this together, drinking in your local pub. Please give us a ring here at Crimewatch if you think you can help identify them. All calls will be treated in confidence.
This is a £50 note.
So I can confirm I have not been able to find any information on that case. I promise you, every crime that is on the program, I do try and look for any information I can on that case, but sometimes it just proves a dead end. You know, when it comes to murders, they tend to be very easy to find. Other crimes, not so much. A lot more difficult.
In fact, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. It's a forgery. Indeed, I've had to promise to return this one after the programme for it to be destroyed officially. The forgeries,
I think you've
and there are a
already done a
tiny
good
fraction
job.
of the 20 million or so genuine £50 notes in circulation, have been around since Easter. Now they're turning up in Northern Ireland. Police there have told us that so far 36 counterfeit notes have been recovered, mainly from the Antrim, Belfast, Down
Okay, in spite of
and
what I
Armagh
said
areas.
a moment ago, I
The forgeries
didn't
are of a
actually
very high
search for
standard.
this one
If you know what you're
because
looking for, they're easy to spot.
money
By holding them
forgery is
against the light, you can see that they have no
too common,
watermark on the front
too
left-hand side.
generic.
Also, there's
We're
no
not going to be able
metallic
to link
strip
it
in
to
the
any
note, although
specific
some
case.
form of dye has been used to give the impression of one. And finally, the forgeries feel different. The paper is of an inferior quality. Remember, if you're lucky enough to receive a £50 note, then
Do you know? I don't remember the last
Because
time
if it
I
is a
got a
forgery and you've
£50 note.
accepted it, then the loss is yours. If you're unlucky enough to get caught out, then do contact your local police station immediately.
There's been a dramatic new turn in an unsolved murder which happened over 6 years ago in Bath. Avon and Somerset Police have asked Crimewatch to help them with a vital new lead. The victim, Mrs. Beryl Culverwell, was found dead in the
I
garage
do
of her
have
home in
information
Winston
for
Hill,
this one,
Bath.
though.
She had been stabbed and then bludgeoned to death with a shotgun. Only 10 days ago, Bath Police received an anonymous phone call, which they believe to be genuine. The caller claims that the man who murdered Mrs. Culverwell has a tattoo, a swallow, somewhere on the left side of his face. It may be on his forehead, something like this. Or it could be lower down. Do you know anyone who has this distinctive mark? Please contact us. Another clue. He was sharing a flat somewhere in the Bath area in 1978 with a man called Steve.
Yeah.
Police would
Okay.
also like the anonymous caller and Steve to come forward.
Finally, a last-minute
Imagine. How many Steves do you think there are in Bath? But, yeah, Beryl Culverwell. So her crime, her murder is still unsolved. So I can give you the information that I have on it. So this happened in January 1978. Beryl was a volunteer for a charity that helped new mothers who were going through financial difficulties. So the story of what happens was her husband came home from work about 6 p.m. in the evening, and he saw a load of shopping that was left on the kitchen table, and the oven was still turned on, and there was like a burnt pasty inside. So he went to investigate, and he found her body in the garage where she had been stabbed multiple times with her own bread knife, and she had been bludgeoned with what they believe was the butt of a shotgun. But the interesting thing was, when they investigate, there were no signs of any disturbance inside the house. Nothing had been upturned. Nothing had been stolen. There was no signs of any sexual assault on her. When they investigated into her life, they could find no one with any likely motive for her murder. So the likely theory is that it was a bungle burglary that went wrong. Obviously, they were planning to come in. Beryl disturbed them, and that was when they murdered her. And then they just abandoned their plan of burglary after the murder. And there are really very few clues. No one reported hearing any screaming or anything like that. There were no fingerprints or forensic evidence inside the house. The only clue they had was a yellow Ford Cortina that had been seen parked outside, and had then been driven away by two men. And other than that, that's the only clue they really had. Obviously, she brought up this thing about the swallow tattoo, but yeah, it doesn't look like that went anywhere. Or Steve. But yeah, so yeah, unfortunately, if you want to look into it, there are a lot of articles about Beryl Culverwell's murder online. This was just one I found on medium.com, but there are others if you prefer different sources. Right.
appeal today
Move
from
on.
Hampshire Police in connection with the crime which took place in the New Forest last Thursday. They need your help to track down a man who carried out a particularly savage rape on a 58-year-old German tourist in the woods just off the A35. The man, 20 to 30 years old, of West Indian or African origin, slim, athletic build, had his hair done in what's called the cane row style. He was wearing a mid to royal blue V-neck jumper and dark-coloured trousers.
Cane row? You mean a corn row?
Around his neck, he had 3 silver-coloured chains with a number of medallions hanging from one of them. A man fitting the description was seen shortly after the attack, driving away in a large green box van along the A35 in the direction
Whoa,
of Lyndhurst.
look at that artist render.
We'd like to hear from anyone who's seen or knows of a dark green van like this. It has a roll-up back door, which could have been driven by our multi-medallion man in the New Forest last Thursday. Remember, you can ring us in strictest confidence here at Crimewatch UK.
The number, as always, 01811 8055. And
So I have looked for that case. I haven't been able to confirm whether that guy was found. But one thing I noticed when I found the original newspaper reports relating to the attack, one thing I noticed was they all refer to her as a spinster from Germany. It's just that just seems unnecessary, doesn't it? Doesn't it? You know, she's just been assaulted. You don't need to insult her as well. But I don't know, just something I noticed.
the detectives here at Crimewatch are already busy with calls received on tonight's cases. We've had nearly 50 calls so far. Over a dozen people have rung in with information on the Hull case. That's the killing of Christopher Laverack. Please do keep trying if you find the lines engaged, but you should get through at the moment. The number 01811 8055.
Do keep trying. Don't try.
Well, now to Operation Bogey, which is the name that the Manchester Regional Crime Squad has given to the task of catching a crook, a bogus official who's been preying on elderly and defenceless victims. He's thought to have committed more than 130 offences, and this hunt for the Manchester bogeyman serves as a warning to people everywhere.
And I have looked. I couldn't find whether this particular man has been found.
As the gas man in another,
Just
and crooks like him operate
putting that
throughout
out there from the start.
Yes?
From the gas board. Sorry to bother you, but we're just checking the new metering system in this area. I have to take a few quick readings. Do you mind if I come in?
We do need to be careful.
Won't take a minute.
It's easy to be fooled by the official-looking card. It's just as easy to be fooled by the helpful handyman.
Look, I hate to tell you this, love, but it's a bit of a mess up there. Whoever done that chimney was a right cowboy.
Right cowboy.
He's in a dreadful state. Look, I could do that job in an afternoon for 50 quid. It'll save you a lot of time and trouble later.
He may just be ripping you off, or like our next con man, he could be blatantly.
Unfortunately, yeah, he's con man all the time. They're still out there today.
I spend most of my time travelling up and down the country talking to people like yourself.
Yeah.
And you know,
and some of them do have the correct credentials.
They don't realise they're antiques. They think they're just worthless. Yes, you've got some very valuable things in this house.
Well, these crimes rarely make the headlines, but their effects are sometimes much more devastating to the victims than other crimes which seem a great deal more dramatic. The Manchester conman, thereafter, seems to have been operating for almost 3 years. His favourite targets are elderly people living alone in high-rise blocks.
He came in
and
he said he wanted to inspect the plugs, and he went from room to room. And I was trying to follow him. And, of course, in my condition, I couldn't follow him, you see. I have an electric bill due, and the phone bill almost due, and some money for my son to take me away for 5 days.
This still happens
so I put
today.
It in my handbag, and he must have picked it up, opened it very quickly. He was a very smooth customer. Opened the zip like that, taken everything out, including my pension. And he got away with the lot.
He took £10 in notes. He took a lady's gold wristwatch. The watch on the chain was. Oh,
Chain.
I don't know how to say it. Gone.
For 79-year-old Henry Townsend, it's those personal mementos he misses most.
Inside my coat was a fob pocket, and inside that fob pocket, I put the rings. He missed them.
Yeah,
but took
these
the
people
gold
don't care.
wristwatch and the gold locket and chain.
I went to my cooker and he pulled the drawer open. He could see there was money in a patty. So we did it. Took the money out. So I thought, oh, my money. When I opened the drawer, my money had gone. But mind you, if I could have got my hands on him, I've got something in here. I'd have clocked him on the head with it. He wouldn't have got up no more.
I've listened to that lady at least 5 times. I still struggle to understand what she's saying. The best I can make out is she's saying he opened the drawer in her cooker and took her money out, and if she could, she would hit him on the head with something. Yeah, don't mess with that old lady.
Well, Detective Superintendent Wood, what else can you tell us about this man which might just make somebody realise that they've met him or seen him somewhere?
Well, here we have a very evil man who is very plausible, very confident, and gets into people's homes by winning the confidence of the individual.
Very evil man.
He operates normally at the lunchtime period. He steals property, which is mainly cash, and we're aware that he's stolen in excess of £50,000.
That's some going, isn't it? Well, let's have a look at the character you want people to watch out for. We have several descriptions of the man, who's white and in his mid to late 30s, and those descriptions differ slightly in some details. So let's start off with one of the most recent sightings. This standard photo fit came from a witness who encountered him earlier this year. Once again, the Crimewatch video fit cleans up the black and white original, and according to the witness's recollection, adds details like skin tone
Crimewatch has
and
so
hair
much
colour.
better technology
Various
than the
witnesses
police
thought the
there.
moustache was false. The video fit gives you an impression of how he'd look without one. There have been other good descriptions. This photo fit from 1982 shows a man with rather straighter hair. In this case, by the way, we haven't enough information to add any greater detail. If you put the 3 video fit images side by side, we'll get a range there of possible faces.
So it's either
Yes,
Tom
it's a very
Baker,
good description
Graham
indeed.
Souness,
But we are mindful, of
or
course, that
Private
in some
Walker
instances
from
we've
Dad's
had the
Army.
moustache described as being false, and of course that could equally apply to the hair as well. So what we're asking anybody who feels they could assist us with the identity of this man, we'd be very grateful.
So basically, if anybody sees anybody suspicious, no matter what they look like, if they think they might be the person, to get in touch with you.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Wood.
Well, the number, if you can help, 01811
do warn any
8055
elderly
here in the
relatives
Crimewatch
you
studio,
have,
or you can ring Manchester Direct on
to be
855
careful of
3975.
any callers, be
There
it
it is,
over the phone
061
or
for
even
Manchester,
in person.
855
It doesn't happen so much in person now,
3975.
but
Now, a story about
you
one
know,
man and
do
his
warn
dog.
your elderly
It's
relatives.
a mystery story that ends up with both man and dog being attacked and stabbed to death in a wood in Sussex. As the story unfolds, you may feel that you have rather little sympathy for the man. He was a drugs dealer, and one that cheated his customers at that. But the police are particularly anxious to catch the killer. It looks like what's at
Because it all
stake here may
connects
be
to
a
a
drugs
wider
ring whose
web,
members are
doesn't it?
prepared to kill to get their way. The trail starts at a seaside town.
If you can solve this, maybe you can get some of the
Hastings
bigger
is a quiet
players.
south coast resort with pleasure craft
Even
and fishing
if
boats,
he
and
is a drug
tradition
dealer.
of smuggling that goes back generations. The modern contraband is drugs, and for
That's
those
true.
that want it, there's anonymity in a town
Hastings
that's used
does
to
have
having
a
visitors,
good history
and there are good
for
connections to
its
London
smuggling
and
routes.
beyond. 5
And there was
months
some
ago,
battle that
these men
happened.
discovered how deadly some of those connections are. Near Brightling, 12 miles from Hastings, there's an aerial ropeway that links a gypsum mine and its processing works. For 3 months, there'd been something lying, decomposing and undetected in the undergrowth.
What you got there? What you found?
3 months. He was in a
Gary
he was in a
Collins
shallow
was
grave.
barely recognisable. He'd been 25, tall, with dark curly hair. He and the dog had been beaten and stabbed repeatedly. Gary had always lived in Hastings, a fit young man, a sportsman. He'd been living with his girlfriend, and the two of them had been saving up to buy a house. Gary and his Alsatian collie Trudy had gone missing 2 weeks before Christmas. The last time they were seen alive was when they left their rented flat in St. Thomas's Road in Hastings. It's 10 o'clock on the morning of the 12th of December last year. A neighbour saw
Just
him
off
leave.
on his rounds.
Gary Collins should have gone to work that day, but didn't. He had a part-time job packing eggs, but police now know Gary had been running a little business of his own. He started by selling small amounts of cannabis to friends, but then to an ever-growing market. He was known to customers and dealers as the man with the dog.
The man with the dog.
The two of them had been frequent visitors
Well,
to
I guess
London
it
in the
is
year before they died.
unique if you're always
Several of Gary's
with your dog
associates
when
have
you
helped police to
make your
build up a picture
drop-offs.
of his growing trade in drugs. So far, Gary's movements have been traced to North and West London in particular. He's known to have met contacts in Camden, Islington and Kensington. And it's clear his drugs dealing involved double dealing too. Two people, a former partner in crime of his and one of Gary's former cannabis suppliers, have given matching descriptions of an incident that shows the dangerous and devious game Gary was involved in. The drug
Silly boy.
supplier was to meet them at Victoria.
Get it all?
Yeah, fine.
I'll put this in the boot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't look suspicious.
You have one of these, you want?
Oh dear, oh dear.
Where's he gone? So I made a phone call, hasn't he? You got the money then? Well, give it to you just now, didn't he? You bastards.
By then, it was too late. Gary's accomplice vanished with the drugs, and Gary just drove off. Gary's deals were also growing more ambitious.
Silly.
Through Interpol, police have traced a grand scheme for smuggling cocaine through Brussels and Amsterdam, financed by exporting illegal amphetamines to Stockholm. Shocked by Gary's murder,
this
another
case has
dealer
gone
at the time
international.
explains how Gary was now playing in a bigger league.
He was known as the dealer, the man with the BMW and the dog. He would have been an easy target to any of the other type of gangsters.
Yeah, his
that are just
BMW
looking
doesn't look
plainly to
like
rip people
the
off.
luxury car we think of now.
They'll sort of promise the earth, and all they want is to rip off everything. They'll even come up with the hash.
I mean,
and you'll
it looks
come up
like
with
he
the
even
money,
uses
and
his
they'll take
indicators.
both.
What happened in the last few hours of Gary's life is still not known. Remember, it's Monday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas. Someone drove his grey BMW to Battle railway station. The station staff saw it there at noon.
Battle
rest
is
is
about 3
speculation.
miles away from where
Except
the
for
actual
one
Battle
thing.
of Hastings took place.
Whoever took the car there took the trouble to turn it round in the narrow car park to face the exit. Perhaps Gary drove it there himself. Maybe he'd arranged to meet a contact there.
So he's dumped by a careful driver.
Curiously, though Gary was meticulous about his BMW, the car was left unlocked. Maybe there was an unexpected change of plan.
could say
Or
that.
maybe Gary met someone at Battle Station from a London or Hastings train, and perhaps they drove off together, and the car was later taken back there after Gary's death.
To be honest, that does seem more likely.
Or maybe Gary never went to Battle Station. The car was simply dumped there after he was killed.
I don't think we need to see another shot of the car being parked, do we?
Whatever happened at the station, somehow, presumably with someone,
Yeah, but
Gary went to the
CCTV
secluded
wasn't so
woods by the gypsum
prevalent
line
back
near
then.
Breitling. With him, as almost always, was his dog. Somewhere he changed into Wellingtons from the light brown moccasins he'd been wearing when he'd left the flat. The moccasins are an important clue. They haven't yet been found. It's fairly certain from forensic evidence that Gary was alive when he arrived at the woods near Breitling.
So, follow those moccasins.
Maybe he was forced there. Maybe he was going to retrieve some hidden drugs or money. On Monday, December the 12th last year, Gary Collins and Trudy went on their last walk together.
See, boy, he got in over his head. So,
well, you might see something about the death of Gary Collins in the papers
If
tomorrow, because today an inquest at Hastings into his death recorded a verdict of unlawful killing.
So, yeah, if it wasn't clear, it wasn't just Gary who got murdered there. It was also his dog.
Superintendent Clements, it's obviously a very difficult case for you because people who've been dealing in drugs, people who've been buying cannabis, are most unlikely to come forward as witnesses.
That's true. We've considered the matter so serious that
Jim
we've
Bowen
granted
on the
an
case.
amnesty against anybody that has had any drug dealings with Gary Collins, in the hope that they'll come forward and give us information or evidence that may help us trace the person responsible for Gary's death.
To be candid, even though you say you've got an amnesty, I can imagine people watching who may have known Gary, may have, say, bought cannabis from him, don't think they can solve the murder and will be very reluctant, particularly if they don't have a record, to get on police files.
Well, I can quite definitely say that anyone
that's
comes
going to be a
forward
problem.
and gives details
Getting druggies
about
to come
dealings they've
forward
had
to the
with Gary
police.
can feel absolutely certain nothing will happen. We have plenty of statements from people who've had dealings with Gary, that statements which could have landed them into very serious trouble, but we've taken no notice of this because we're after a particularly vicious criminal who's killed this man in a most savage manner.
The man in the silhouette,
that's right,
who helped us, what's happened to him? Have you taken action against him?
No, not at all.
And if people want to ring anonymously, will you listen to their information?
Absolutely. Obviously, the best information is from persons who give their name and address, but anyone who wants to ring anonymously, we should be more than pleased to hear what they've got to say, Mr. Ross.
Now, if people do ring in, what is it that you want to know? What sort of people do you want to reach?
We want to hear from people that
People
have
who
known
know
Gary,
something,
especially
ideally.
in drug stealing. Anybody that might have seen him when he arrived at Battle Railway Station on the 12th of December, or perhaps even out at Breitling Wood. People that might have been on holiday that just happened to be passing and didn't even know that a murder had been committed.
The date, of course, 2 weeks before Christmas, the 12th of December,
That's
wasn't
right.
it? So you really want anybody who knew Gary did drugs dealing, but knew him at any stage and may know nothing about the murder?
Well, if they think they can help us at all, we would be more than
I mean,
pleased to hear.
I think it would be
Have
better
you
if they did
got
know
hold of
something
everyone
about
you
the
want in
murder.
particular? Are there any people you know of out there that haven't yet come forward?
There is a lady, a blonde woman in a brown coat that has been seen by a green Toledo that has been seen with Gary on the A21, which is the battle to the main London road, on at least 2 occasions, and on one occasion which she was with 2 men who carried grey disposable bags. And I would like to say, Mr. Ross, that there is also, of course, a reward of £5,000 offered
Mr.
by
Ross?
Mr. Collins Sr., Gary's father, for any information that leads to the arrest and conviction of the persons responsible for Gary's death.
They never call him
Well, Thomas,
Mr.
thank
Ross.
you
They
very much
usually
indeed.
call him Nick.
Right, again, the numbers. Remember, there's an amnesty. Remember, whatever you think about cannabis or other
I don't know
drugs,
why
we're
that's
looking for a
so
murderer
weird to
and
hear
a man
someone
who
call
could
him
strike
Mr.
again.
Ross.
Call us here, please. 01 811 8055. You can talk to civilians if you prefer, or you can call Sussex Police directly. Their number, Hastings 444 212. That's 0424 444 212.
And if you haven't had
Okay, so poor old Gary Collins. So obviously the most likely thing is that he just got in over his head. You know, when he was dealing drugs, he was getting more ambitious, and obviously he just ticked the wrong people off. So his case is still unsolved. There are theories out there that it was just it was a gangland contract killing. So Jimbo in there, he did mention the blonde woman who seems to be the internet's favorite suspect. You know, she had been seen with him on at least 2 occasions, and there was a report of her being seen with 2 other men who have been carrying large disposable grey bags, which I think just means bin sacks, but I don't know. So yeah, so his murder's still unsolved, I'm afraid. So yeah, if you're interested, you can look into that one. See if you can come up with your own theories. Just play this
a
out.
chance to write the numbers down, they're all on CFAX, if you have that, on page 187,
CFAX.
together with a brief summary of the cases.
I guess
And
this
if you
would have been
can't
when
get through or you don't have a
CFAX
telephone,
was still a
then drop us a
fairly
line.
newish
Here's the address:
thing.
Crimewatch UK, BBC TV Centre, London,
If you don't know what
W12.
CFAX is, it was
The
like
main number is
the
easy to
internet
remember, and
before
we'll be
we
here
had
all
the
evening.
internet.
So please ring if you think you might be able to help in any way, however small.
In fact,
It
I
was
can
great.
tell you we've 40 calls already on the Humberside boy with information, some identification of
Crowds of
items from
people in
Aladdin's
Dixon's
cave.
gathered on
In
a
fact,
Saturday
as always,
afternoon,
we'll be back to tell you what develops
watching the
an
football
hour and a
scores on
half from now.
CFAX.
That's Crimewatch UK update here on BBC One at 25 to 12. That's directly after the feature film. If you can't stay up till then, please don't have nightmares. Thankfully, the sort of crimes we've been featuring tonight really are far less common than most people imagine them to be. Maybe you can help us make them rarer still.
Remember the number again, 01 811 8055. We'll be waiting for your call. For the moment, good night.
Okay, and there we go. That's another edition of Crimewatch. I don't do the Crimewatch updates because I just don't think there's much point. They're only like 10 minutes, and it's just police officer said, "Oh yeah, well we received a call. It's it's opened a new line of inquiry for us. It's been very interesting." But like I say, it doesn't really add much. You've already got all the basic information you'll need to know. So anyway, yeah. So that's it. So I should be back. I won't be able to do this next week, unfortunately, but I will be back in 2 weeks' time to do another edition of the Crimewatch Rewatch. But I will be appearing on 8 out of 10 Cats' channel later this week for the weekly roundtable quiz. That's on Wednesday from 8 p.m. That's 8 out of 10 cats with a Z at the end. But yeah, until next time, don't have nightmares.